Good afternoon. Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Dr. Poyman. Good afternoon. It's so wonderful to be here. It's amazing to stand where I'm standing and look out onto a crowd like this, a crowd full of people so devoted and committed to the pro-life movement. Give yourselves a round of applause. You know, everyone here today has their own unique story about how they came to serve the pro-life cause. Some of those stories are strongly rooted in faith. Others are based on deeply personal experiences. For some, this has been a lifelong commitment. Others heard the call later in life. But regardless of how we came about it, we are all here for the same reason: to take a principled stand for what we know is right, and to stand fearlessly in support of life. As for my own story, it starts before I was even born. In early 1970, my mother and father were expecting their first child together. During a routine checkup at the doctor's office, my mother received some disturbing news that she had contracted rubella, also known as German measles. While rubella is relatively benign in adults, it carries a significant potential to impart devastating consequences to a child developing in utero. At the time of her diagnosis, my mother was counseled to consider aborting the child she was carrying, with the implication that to do otherwise would condemn her unborn child to a brief and tragic life of pain and suffering. Thankfully for me, my mother and father walked out of that doctor's office and never turned back. And that's the only reason I'm able to stand here before you today as a physician, a husband, a father, and a member of the Texas State Senate. Over the course of my life and my medical career, my appreciation for God's most wonderful creation only deepened, and my devotion to defending life has become even more profound. Some of you may be aware that my wife Belinda is a physician as well, an obstetrician gynecologist who would deliver beautiful newborn babies on a daily basis. She would frequently share the stories of joy that a new family feels when holding their precious child for the very first time, as well as the unimaginable heartache when one of her patients has suffered a miscarriage or some other tragic complication for which there is no remedy. As time went on and our 3 boys entered our lives, our young family was made complete. I can still remember the intensity of the love I felt when I held my oldest son, Carson, in my arms for the very first time. I can still remember the pain I felt when I heard him cry for the very first time. It changed me. It changed me deeply and fundamentally, and in a way that is difficult to describe. After you felt that feeling, it's like a bell that can't be unrung. Once you've seen the miracle of life up close and personal, you're never truly the same again. I find that when I think back on those earliest moments with my son, while I walk the halls of this building behind me, I find it impossible to understand how any God-fearing person could snuff out such a pure and innocent life without a second thought. To treat an unborn child as nothing more than unwanted globs of cells with no identity, with no personality, and with no soul. But we know the truth. And y'all, that's why I'm so proud of the work we've been able to accomplish here in Texas and all that we've been able to do to advance the pro-life movement forward. One of my earliest memories as a freshman legislator was in 2011, as we fought back against the abortion lobby and worked to provide women with reasonable, informed consent regarding the nature of an abortion procedure, as well as what alternatives were available to them. That session, we also asked that women be given the opportunity to view a sonogram of their unborn baby and listen to his heartbeat before making that final and irreversible decision to end the pregnancy. 2 years later, as a member of the Texas Senate, we passed House Bill 2. And we all know what that bill did, that law now. It raised the acceptable standards of care for abortion facilities and banned all abortions in Texas after 20 weeks. Those of us representing the pro-life movement withstood protests and filibusters and special sessions, but we never lost heart. It was the longest and most trying political battle I've ever experienced, but in the end, we succeeded in sending House Bill 2 to the desk of Governor Rick Perry. In 2015, we successfully defunded Planned Parenthood and replaced it with the Healthy Texas Women Program. This program is a robust network of primary health care providers willing to deliver vital women's health services without sponsoring abortion. Only a few short months later, however, undercover videos surfaced which showed Planned Parenthood executives casually discussing the sale of dismembered body parts of unborn children as a means of growing and diversifying their revenue stream. As chairman of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, I acted quickly and decisively, calling an emergency hearing to discuss the content of these videos and determine whether Planned Parenthood or any other abortion providers in Texas had knowingly and willfully violated criminal law or established bioethical standards. I authored a letter to the 2 largest Planned Parenthood chapters in Texas, hoping to hear from them directly on these issues and the explosive allegations leveled against them. However, rather than choosing to participate in this hearing and speak to the heartfelt concerns of millions of Texans, Planned Parenthood declined our invitation and opted instead to host a political rally in the very same spot you're standing today. Now, to prepare for that hearing, my staff and I were charged with a rather unenviable task, carefully reviewing over 8 hours of uncut, unedited video footage from inside a Planned Parenthood facility in Texas. Like many of you, these videos marked the very first time I'd ever seen the inside of an abortion facility, and I'm not sure I could ever forget the things I saw. Heartbreaking images of a tiny heart, a tiny hand, strewn across a cold steel table and sorted like some kind of grotesque high school science experiment. As an orthopedic surgeon, I've spent half my life setting bones and cutting and suturing flesh. On a daily basis, I'm asked to open up people's knees and shoulders and hips and backs in order to help and repair these human bodies that are far more delicate than most people realize. I'm not sure you can describe what I saw as something that most people could stand. I'm not particularly weak-stomached, so please believe me when I tell you that the images of those tiny babies still haunt me to this day. The things I witnessed on these videos are difficult to reconcile with a loving God and a caring and generous people. The idea that anyone would seek to profit by selling the organs and tissues of these tiny babies is beyond abhorrent. It is evil. A just and moral society does not place a price on human life. Its value is intrinsic and universal. It simply cannot and should not be bought, sold, or profited from in any way, shape, or form. That's why this past session, Representative Cindy Burkett and I worked together to pass Senate Bill 8, also known as the Preborn Protection and Dignity Act. This legislation will end the sale or exchange of human fetal tissue in Texas once and for all, and outlaws the barbaric practice of partial birth abortion in state law. People of good conscience can't stand by while unborn babies are torn apart, monetized, and traded like some sort of a perverse commodity. With your continued support and help, we'll see that such horrific things never happen in Texas again. Now is an important time in our movement. It's a time that asks us whether we have the courage of character to stand up and speak the truths that have long been silenced. The simple truths which tell us that every life is precious and that every life has a value which no one can put a price on. That's why it's more important than ever that those of you here today stay motivated and keep yourselves involved. It's why it's important that you stand up and support the strong pro-life leaders we're so fortunate to have in Texas, such as Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. In conclusion, our state government has a moral imperative to protect its most vulnerable Texans, the elderly and infirm, pregnant women, those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, young children, and perhaps the most vulnerable Texans of all, the unborn. Thank you. May God bless you, your families, and this great state.